All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you all for coming. This looks like a pretty packed room, so I'm very excited to be here. My name is Ethan Levy, and I'm here today to present Designing In-Game Purchases. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. How's the volume, by the way? Good? Okay. I flew in last night, and I still can't hear out of one ear, so I'm a little worried. Might have trouble with questions, but hopefully we'll get over that. So anyways, I've been working in the industry for 11 years. I started here in Los Angeles, where I was a student at USC. Fight on, any other Trojans in the audience. And I used to work at Pandemic Studios. Oh, you go to UCLA, I guess? I used to work at Pandemic Studios for 2 years as an intern and a tester, and I actually see the face of at least one person I used to fetch dinner for. But in the past 11 years, I've contributed to over 35 shipped titles in some way, shape, or form. I used to be a producer at EA BioWare's San Francisco office, where I was the producer of the Dragon Age Legends game, and then the design manager of that studio. I left about a year and a half ago to found a startup, which has since failed, and I also ascended into a career as a monetization consultant. I've worked for 18 or 19 different clients on a lot of games, free-to-play, mostly mobile, a little bit of gamification. I don't know if you've seen any of my articles online, but I'm also waging a war to be the most hated game designer on the internet. These are some of the comments from articles I've written about free-to-play on Reddit or Kotaku. We've got, "You're exactly the sort of person who are ruining gaming, pure unadulterated evil. Ethan Levy, you're a horrible person. You're what's wrong with video games." And my favorite one is this guy using the Glee gif saying, "But I really hate the condescending, offensive, effete, stereotypical San Francisco attitude." I actually had to look up what effete means, and apparently, because I like working on free-to-play games, it means it's time for me to talk to my doctor about Cialis. Anyways, before I get started, I like to ask what you would like to get out of this session, and be a little loud because, as I said, I can't hear out of one ear right now. But, you saw the title, you maybe read the thing in the PowerPoint. I have 8 hours worth of lecture on free-to-play, so I want to make sure that I'm delivering the talk that you want. Obviously, I can't change the slides, but I can emphasize or de-emphasize, skip over certain parts. So what do you hope to get out of today's session?
I'd like to know what people consider pay-to-play and how to avoid that kind of consumption. Pay-to-win.
Got it. So how does one design for free-to-play while avoiding the pay-to-win stigma so hated out here in the U.S. and Canada, and it works pretty well out in China and Taiwan and Asia in general?
What effective items, or what people want that are effective items to sell.
Got it. So what sort of things should you have in your offer catalog?
Actually, I'd like to know how much people are willing to pay for some of those things that the answer to.
Got it. So what are kind of the price ranges of items people are willing to pay for in the free-to-play game?
When you update your game, you're adding content to the website, so in-app purchases being added about this flooded, ending up flooding your in-app purchases.
Got it. So as you have a live game and you operate it over time, how can you make sure you're updating it intelligently and not ending up with a just horrible store catalog? That actually happened to us on Dragon Age Legends. Our store system had a pagination system on the bottom. By the time we were live for 6 months, there were more dots than screen width. It was a mess. And somebody had to go through and actually call the store of items that just weren't selling.
How do you win over that audience that thinks you're the Antichrist and get $1 out of it?
How do I win over the audience that thinks I'm the Antichrist? I don't pay attention to them. They're not going to spend money. Or actually, there have been good studies that those people who rage about free-to-play actually also spend the most on free-to-play. So I just ignore what they're saying and let the wallets do the talking. One more?
Whatever words of wisdom you have on managing in-game currency.
Okay, words of wisdom on managing in-game currency. So I think you guys are going to be really happy with this session, and maybe some of the things that aren't in here I can kind of address at the end with some Q&A. So before I start, let me just tell you a quick anecdote about Halloween. So I was working downtown the day of Halloween, and my fiance got home from her day teaching school, and she texted me, "Will you please pick up another bag of candy? I'm worried, although no one has come yet." So she'd been there. She wanted me to get another bag of candy. We'd had no trick-or-treaters. About an hour later, when I was ready to go home, she let me know that we still hadn't had any trick-or-treaters. We still had a full bowl of candy, and I felt confident that I didn't need to buy another one. Now, I live in San Francisco. I live in an urban area where it's not I'm in a pretty nice neighborhood, but it's not as clear-cut that you can knock on every door. And so when I got home, it made sense to me why no kids were knocking on the door. Our door was closed. We had no decorations. Our light was kind of barely on. So, and we just had a completely full bowl of candy. So I put on my Wario hat and my Wario gloves, and I sat out on the porch, and within an hour, we had an empty bowl of candy because I finally invited people to join with me in this ritual of enjoying Halloween and getting free candy, and I got to meet some kids and see costumes, and it really made my night much better than sitting there wondering why no one's coming in. And that may seem a little silly, but this is the story that informs the entire talk. When I play free-to-play games, the thing that I see the most is that the game itself makes it very difficult, if not impossible, for a player to know that they can spend money and to spend money easily. So the major theme of this talk is about how to make those players who are primed, who actually want to spend money within your game, how do you make it as easy for them as possible to be aware that those purchases exist and make it easy to make those purchases? Because those are the mistakes I see repeated over and over. I'm going to cover 4 topics. Is my game a good fit for freemium? Is my design built for freemium? Am I selling the right things? And what example should I follow? And for those that take pictures, don't worry. I'll put all this up on my website later this week, famousaspect.com. I'll put all the slides and the audio up. And I've got slides and audio from previous talks and a lot of articles I've written on free-to-play topics and general game design topics. First topic, am I ready for microtransactions? So the first 3 slides I stole from Congregate. They're one of the best freely available data sources on free-to-play game. And they basically make the point that when you're making a free-to-play game, a long-term relationship with your player is the key driver of monetization. So you need a game that somebody's going to play for weeks and weeks or months and months and not just a couple days or not just a couple sessions. So this first chart kind of shows on the bottom axis, the more engaged players are, the more likely they are to spend money. That's all. This one is really nice. It shows kind of revenue breakdown by veterancy type. And basically, what is it? Of players who've played 50 or more sessions across Congregate's free-to-play portfolio, 16% of them, 16.5% of them have spent money, and they account for 84% of the total revenue of the game. So that alone should convince you that when you're working on a free-to-play game, your first order of business is actually to get a game that players will stay in for days and days and weeks and months, not a game that has 3 or 4 sessions worth of gameplay and then no compelling reason to come back. This one shows the number of sessions before the average player makes their first purchase. For a multiplayer game, it's an average of 23 gameplay sessions before a paying player makes their first purchase. So all of that just goes to illustrate the point that you need to focus on a long-term relationship with your player. I like to break games down into their early game, mid-game, and elder game, and I'm clearly not the only person who talks about it this way. But you need some sort of new early game that onboards players, that teaches them how to play and holds their hand and teaches them where to spend money. Then you generally have a mid-game where they're learning the ropes, they're exploring on their own, they might be playing linear content. And then some sort of elder game. It's really key, if you can, especially if you're in the more mid-core range of free-to-play games, that you launch with an elder game. One of the biggest mistakes that you can make is launching your game without some sort of mechanism to keep those players who play through all the linear content, to keep them playing day after day in your game and not abandoning ship for somebody else's game. Generally, this takes the form of some sort of social multiplayer, either cooperative or competitive elder game that ideally is infinitely repeatable, or at least largely repeatable with some content that you update maybe once a week or once a month. As I said, great elder games are social, competitive, infinitely replayable, and involve some sort of social organism. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So let's talk about the core loop. Is my game built for freemium? So this is the single biggest place where I see missteps in the world of free-to-play games. Normally I draw out some core loop diagrams. I've actually left them out of this talk today. Basically, it's a way of looking at what the main sections of your game are. That's basically the path of least resistance a player will play over and over and over again. If you watch players play your game, you'll notice that some players do explore the different menus and look at all the different stuff, but a lot of players don't. A lot of players are afraid of veering off the beaten path, or they're not really interested. And so it's really important to look at your game through the eyes of what is the path of least resistance for a new player. So let me look at two games, both of which I really like. But one feels like purchasing is very present, and one feels like purchasing is not present. And that's kind of like my big mantra, make purchasing present. So Major Mayhem, published by Adult Swim Games, is great. Like, I really love it. It's a lot of fun. But it's one of those games where I play it for like 2 hours and I go, oh, you never asked me for money. Like, not once did you ask me for money or even make it clear that I could spend money. So the game starts, I'm Major Mayhem, I'm helicoptering in, it's loading the level, and I copter down and I go, and it's a shooting gallery game. It's really nice, appealing graphics, lots of fun. For me, it's like a very gratifying experience because when I play Borderlands, I like to be a sniper, and this just gives me kind of the bite-sized headshot experience that I love. Now, sometimes when I'm playing, it'll pop up this little message, try out a new weapon from the armory. And if I'm a curious player, I can actually pause the game and go to the store and buy that weapon. But this is a pop-up message in the middle of a game where I'm really focusing my eyes and my attention on these ninjas. And this is the only time it makes it clear that, oh, I can go to a store and buy new weapons. When I finish a level, I get to the chopper. It shows me my results. It shows me how I proceed on the objectives. And I immediately load into the next level. Not once do I see the ability to go to a store. It doesn't prompt me to spend money, and I loved this game. I had a lot of fun, but as I said, I played a couple hours without once even being aware that the ability to spend money was within this game. Now contrast that to Despicable Me Minion Rush, which I just played for the first time this week, and I thought it would be like another Me Too runner, and it's a really kind of best-in-class example of a runner game. It's really very good. They've done a great job. So, I'm sure you've all played some form of Infinite Runner, whether it's Temple Run, Running with Friends, or any of the other ones on the App Store. So they do a great job of immersing you in this world of the minions of Despicable Me. They really sell the narrative. And at the beginning of each level, my minion kind of runs into the level. And and it's non-interactive, except you can see down on the bottom, I can spend my premium currency, or this is my earned currency first, on a boost. It actually serves it to me in the first 20 seconds of the level with some nice time pressure. And then it also gives me the ability to spend my earned currency. Meanwhile, this is like a small portion of the screen while I'm like watching my goofy minion run and catapult into the level. And then I do my infinite running, and here I've actually smacked another minion and gotten a despicable bonus. And at the end of the level, purchasing, I hit a truck, I hit the glass, and here purchasing is present again. I have a nice little time pressure, and I can revive for 20 coins and continue my run if I'm having a good one. This is a trend you'll notice in a lot of new free-to-play games, especially the more casual-leaning ones, that if you lose the level, you can spend a small amount of premium currency to continue that run. That may be a little too much for some people. That's up to your choice. I haven't seen any metrics on any of these games with this feature, so I don't know how much it hurts or doesn't hurt yet. I hope to in the next 6 to 9 months. But just the main concept is every time I run in Despicable Me, I'm offered the ability to spend my currency. Contrast that to Major Mayhem, where I can spend hours playing without ever once knowing that I can spend my currency. So it's just important to examine your game's core loop, examine your path of least resistance, and ask yourself, are players given the ability to spend money if they wanted to do so? Let's talk a little bit about the offer catalog and what the things you have for sale are. My other new mantra is that a purchase makes a promise. if somebody spends money on your game, you have promised them future fun. And if you don't deliver on that promise, then they will quit your game and go play another game, and they might even leave you a bad review. So think about what you are selling somebody when you are selling them an in-game purchase. It's my opinion that if you're selling them the ability to get over a frustration hurdle, you are more likely to churn that user than to keep them for the long term. And in general, if somebody spends money, they better have a great time in your game. Kingdom Rush is a great series. I'll talk about it twice in this talk. They sell gems, and in the first one, you can use gems to get consumable items that help you win levels. Now, I bought this game. It's a premium game with in-app purchases. And I bought it, and I spent hours playing it, and I got to a level that was a little too hard, and I'm one of those time-poor, money-rich players. I have infinitely more money to spend on games than I have time to play them. If you look at my Steam library, I think I've purchased about 400 games, and I've played maybe 120 of them. And I still buy games. Like, I don't know why I do it. It makes no sense. But I'm a money-rich, time-poor player. And so when I get to a level where I'm frustrated, it's not that the level is cheating me. At no point in Kingdom Rush did I feel like I was being milked. And some games, I think for me, Candy Crush makes me feel like this level's impossible. Like, this level is physically impossible unless I play it 100 times and I get that one random lucky level. Kingdom Rush, I played it. It's like the level's a little too hard. I value my time. I spent my money on a consumable item. And I can remember the feeling in Doom the first time that I opened up the command line and typed in the God code, and I could walk through walls, and I had the rocket launcher, and I was like, yes, I am so powerful. And Kingdom Rush made me feel that way. It, like, brought back that joy of, like, I've been struggling and, like, just barely winning by the skin of my teeth for hours, and then now I've spent money, and I feel awesome. And when I was done using my premium currency, I actually bought more premium currency because I had so much fun spending hitting the God button. And I only had that fun because I could contrast it to the experience I had for the first 4 hours where I was, struggling and just barely winning and losing some levels. So it was that emotional difference that really made me feel like I was awesome. But the larger point is, if you're selling somebody something, if you're considering putting something in your store or not, try and think about what that player is truly buying if they are buying that item. And it ought to be, in my opinion, more fun. Crossing the penny gap. So a starter pack can be a really effective way to ask for money. A lot of what I do when I work on games is tell people that it's okay to ask for money. Like, I feel like when people hire me, they just hire me so I can give them permission to say, hi, player, will you please spend money in this game I've spent hundreds of man hours and thousands of dollars working on? Starter packs can be really nice because what you can do is provide a great value at a huge discount. This is Card Hunter, which is a really nice free-to-play game on the browser right now. It does a great job of fictionalizing everything. Like, the premium currency is pizza, and when you're playing D&D at a table with miniatures, like, I actually had the D&D experience I never had as a kid playing this game because my group of friends was too emotionally volatile, and we couldn't go an hour without someone crying. We were bad at D&D. So this game, so you've been playing for a while, and the pizza girl shows up, and she delivers pizza, and that's what introduces you to pizza slices, which is the premium currency, and your character has a crush on the cute pizza girl. It's really funny, and it really made me feel immersed in the world. But when I go to the store, right here, Basic Edition, $25, and it shows me all the things I get. I get 100 pizza slices, I get all the access to all the levels, I get 1 month club membership. They could do a better job of explaining in this screen what club membership is, but in other points they explain to me the incredible value of being part of the club. And what I love about this screen is that it's on the paywall. If I go to the paywall and I haven't bought the starter pack, I see the option and I see a really nice advertisement to buy this starter pack. And I've heard from at least one game developer friend when I was discussing this game. He's the sort who works on free-to-play but never spends money in free-to-play, which I'm sure a lot of you are. And he told me this is the first game that got him over the hurdle. It was this starter pack. The other thing I like about starter packs is that if you're a game that's very shy about asking for money, this gives you the ability to ask for money. I generally recommend somewhere in the first couple hours of your games popping up an advertisement for your starter pack, maybe 5 to 8 times. If somebody's seen it 8 times and they haven't bought it, they're not going to buy it, so stop advertising it. It's just going to annoy them. I always caution that you have to be really respectful of the player. Like, a long-term player relationship is the most important thing. It's more important than any short-term revenue gains you could get. There's a game called Call of Mini Infinity, and I think this developer has other games that are in the top 500 grossing that are just masters of SEO search terms. Like, Call of Mini Infinity is for SEO, like a brilliantly devious game. This is the second screen the game showed me. I've never seen anything in the game. I've never played the game. I'm not even looking at a menu, and it offers to sell me the starter pack. Of course I'm not going to buy it. Like, this is a very poorly placed advertisement. Now, I've operated a live game before. I know how this sort of thing happens. This happens because on your game team, you don't test the experience as a new user over and over and over again, and you introduce features post-launch. So what I assume happened is post-launch, they introduced a starter pack. They put in a pop-up trigger for all players who have never seen this trigger, buy the starter pack. Well, if I'm a new player, I'm seeing this thing with absolutely no context, and I'm never going to buy it. And I already get the feeling this is one of those slimy games that's trying to milk me. It's a fun game, but it's just like you tell the player something every time you ask them for money. There's a danger to selling linear content in your game. This is Bloons Tower Defense 4, a great game, very fun, and also like a top-grossing game. So obviously they didn't fall into the trap I talked about, but it's just a good screenshot for their selling levels. And the danger of selling levels is that you sell levels after somebody has played all your previous levels. So if you have a ridiculously sticky game like Angry Birds, selling levels can be bonanza business. But this is fake metrics from almost every level-based game I've worked on. I've worked on some level-based games. Diner Dash series has incredible stickiness. They do not have or when I worked on them years ago, did not have this sort of player attrition. But in general, like, your curve looks like this. So if you're only selling players' levels at the end of your experience, you're selling to 2% of your total audience. There's nothing wrong with selling linear content, but it can't be the only thing you sell. If it's the only thing you sell, you're really limiting the potential pool of players. And so generally in a free-to-play game, you're going to see drop-off in the first 5 to 15 minutes, and you can optimize that drop-off, but it's inevitable. You're going to lose players. But after that time, you want to make sure that you are offering players at every level the ability to spend money in your game. You don't want to be selling to only a small fraction of your audience. Some games sell permanent goods, some games sell consumable goods. I like to make sure that games have a blend of the two, and I really push for consumable goods and consumable goods tied into that core loop. It depends on the economy of the game. So like Despicable Me, you do not spend any currency in order to run. You can run forever for free and play forever for free. In a game like Backyard Monsters, you are spending currency every time you play the game, right? I spend resources to make units. I spend units to play the tower offense game. I spend currency to play the tower defense game. Everything I'm doing involves spending currency, and it's all tied nicely into my core loop. A danger a lot of games make is that they have consumable purchases, but they're either not tied into that core loop, or they're like really hidden within the game. They're not surfaced very well in a way that, like Despicable Me, they make it really easy to pay. A lesson I like to talk about from Dragon Age Legends is we sold $13 swords. And the first day we put $13 swords in, if I remember correctly, we had a bonanza day. Like, it was the best sales day we had had in the live operation of that game. And so we put in more high-priced items. And players liked them. Players were happy with the purchases. But the thing we discovered a couple months down the line, was that if a player had purchased a $13 sword at level 8, it was so powerful they didn't need to buy another $13 sword to level 40. And even then, they maybe didn't have to. And a lot of players did not make it that far into the game because we did a really poor job of managing the linear content. We didn't have an elder game. Players were always playing our content faster than we could deliver it to them, and we didn't have something, and we just lost users. And so it's my opinion that had we sold a equally powerful sword that you got to use for 5 battles for a quarter, we would have made significantly more revenue off of that concept than off of the $13 permanent items. So it's not to say don't sell permanent things within your game, but it's just to say there's a danger and there's a balance. And in general, I lean on that consumable side of the economy and a little bit away from the permanent goods economy, unless your game has a unique economy system. To bring up Kingdom Rush again, something that a lot of games don't do is offer something that you can buy for money. Like, they have their currency packages, right? Here I am buying gems. I tried to buy something for 500 and I need to buy more gems. But what Kingdom Rush also has is heroes that I can buy for dollars. And a lot of games only sell premium currency packages and don't have items that you can only buy directly for cash, which is something you can do now on the App Store and on the on Google Play. And what I like about that is that, you know, it's my opinion as a designer that there's no such thing as a perfectly balanced economy. Like, you can do your best, and if you're monitoring with metrics, you can catch exploits as soon as you put them in, but you're more likely than not to slip up, to make it easy for players to grind for currency in some sort of fashion, or in general to make it that players, I mean, you actually want to make it that players don't have to spend money, that if they're really dedicated to your game, they can get everything for free. So this is why I like to tell people that it's good that if your game supports it, to offer something that you can buy only directly for dollars. And if you look at top grossing items on top in-app purchases on Kingdom Rush Frontiers, it's not currency packages, it's heroes. So luxury items. This is an extreme example. I think the majority of games cannot support justifiably a $500 gun. But one of the biggest things I tend to work on with developers is asking them and telling them to raise their prices and generally offer things that cost more. A friend of mine worked on a game called trying to record it so I can put the slides up later. A friend of mine works on a game called Last Stand Dead Zone. He gave a talk at the Flash Game Summit. And after about a year of live operation of a free-to-play social MMO, the biggest lesson he learned was that in pricing, when you're introducing an item, start much higher than you think is reasonable, and in terms of item power, start much lower than you think is reasonable, and then adjust until you're happy with the sales numbers. That it wasn't until he started operating in that fashion that he started to feel like he was getting the amount of revenue he needed from his free-to-play items. So I don't think you should the lesson isn't go sell $500 items, but it is don't be afraid of charging $7 for something. Don't only charge $7 for something, but don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of charging $20 for something if you think your game can justify it, if your item can deliver enough value. These sorts of high-priced items, I think, work better on the more mid-core games, targeted at the male gamer, a little older, a little in the 18 to 35 and up range. I don't think a $500 purchase has a place in Sonic Dash or My Little Ponies Rush or more kid-focused games. Similarly, really do a lot of analysis on your offer wall and look at other games in the space and analyze kind of what their packages are, what price points they're selling at, and what the volume discounts they're offering are. It's a general practice that the more money somebody spends, the more currency you get for free. The thing that I've learned is that, let's say you're working on a very casual-focused slot mechanic game. Those games give like 10,000 free currency relative to the base package for a $100 package. Like, they really either have to or want to deliver a lot of value to get somebody to spend a lot of money. Whereas a more core-focused game like a Clash of Clans, I think they give about a 38% free value, free currency for their more high-priced package. A lot of developers that I tend to work with, they think of their pricing as relative to other items on the App Store. And so when they first show me their offer wall, it's like $1, $2, $3, $7. And I try and push them up. I try and push them to like the $3 to $20 range. Not all games can support $100 worth of value, but in general, you can probably support somewhere in the $10 to $20 range. And if somebody's in the store and they're looking at a $1 game versus a $3 game next to each other, that's a meaningful comparison. If they're caught within your world, they're in a monopoly. They're no longer pricing games relative to games on the Steam store or other games on the App Store. They're pricing their packages relative to each other. And so it's okay to ask for more money. And so really just kind of look at top performers in your audience, in your genre. There are a lot of good metrics you can look at. You can look at their store, you can look at their price points, you can then go into Apple and look at their top selling items and see which packages are selling the best, and try and figure out how their discounts and how like all these badges, best value, popular, how these free items, how do they actually affect the sales. And in general, what you'll find is that these packages have a way you try and kind of anchor somebody on a price. Like, if I look at this Card Hunter thing, this $50 package was selected by default when I got there. And it's not because they are trying to get me to sell the premium package, but it's my hypothesis that what this does is that it makes this $20 package look a lot more attractive than if I had no package selected by default or if I had the $10 package selected by default. They're trying to anchor me at a price point to make other price points look more attractive. So that's kind of my take on how I analyze various price points. Casual games have to give away more currency. Mid-core games can give away less currency. You could maybe intuit from that mid-core games are delivering more game value for the currency that somebody's spending. Let's talk about some UI, UX best practices. What are the steps that I see that I think people most commonly skip? First one is to teach players to spend. A lot of games don't ever show you where you have to go to spend money. And they also don't necessarily show you the value of spending money. And I'm talking about your in-game currency here. So this is Batman Arkham Origins. You might have seen, I did an analysis piece on Arkham Origins versus Injustice Gods Among Us recently on Game Industry International, just talking about how Batman doesn't sell as much stuff as Injustice, and for two similar games, Injustice is still performing better than the newer game with the better intellectual property. So if you find that interesting, it's a good piece that's out there. Something Batman does do very well is it teaches me how to spend my currency. And it does it in a narrative fashion that I find really nice. So Alfred talks to me. He shows me to go to the store. This is something I've noticed recently, actually, in a lot of games, is that I hate the overly guided tutorial where it just shows you bouncing arrow after bouncing arrow on screens that you have no context in. My personal behavior as a player is I just press all the buttons as quickly as possible, and I'm seeing some head shakes, so I bet you all do too. This is much nicer, in my opinion, which is that they show you the same thing, which is the arrow, but they also give you the information as to why you're pressing the button. And I feel like this is a much more player-focused approach. The overly guided tutorial, I feel like, is the product manager. You're actually optimizing for a metric, but forgetting about your players. This feels much nicer. So this tells me basically, go to the store. You can buy bat suits. Ask me to confirm my purchase. I have my bat suit, and it asks me to equip it, and then it takes me into combat. Pretty nice and simple. And what's nice about that is that it teaches me where I go to spend my currency and what I get and what my options are and how I exit out. You'd be surprised at how many games never show you where you go to spend currency. I think if I go back to Major Mayhem, that's one of my biggest gripes with that game as a free-to-play guy, is that it never takes me to the store. tells me to buy a sniper rifle, and then shows me how awesome I am afterwards. Like, when I did that, I felt great. Like, I had a lot more fun once I had the sniper rifle equipped. So teach... Do you have a question?
I'm talking to you on this game.
Uh-huh.
I like what you're saying. We worked with another on a lot to make sure that the tutorial felt like it was in the world.
Yeah.
Like, the typical, just telling you go to the store, go do this, we want to make it.
Yeah.
It felt like it was in line with the players, and it was so that they could, it wasn't just telling them to do these things.
Yeah, and I think you guys did a great job. Like, the onboarding process in Arkham Origins relative to Injustice and relative to a lot of games is really phenomenal. I think I hats off to you, basically. It's a great first-time user experience. Okay, first taste is always free. This is from CSR Classic, and this is a lesson that from CSR, I've been saying this in conferences for a year and a half, and I'm really surprised more games don't do this. So it's even better in CSR Classic. But here I am with my beat-up classic car. And like, the game is all about restoring classic cars to their former glory. Like, it really does a good job of tailoring the experience to an audience. So here I am in my totally beat-up, janky-looking car. And very early on, it introduces me to my favorite feature in the game, which is this daily battle. 3 times a day, I get a loaner car. And the loaner cars are what they sell for premium and earned currency. This is where they make their money, is on selling premium cars. And so 3 times a day, every day, I get to see what it's like to play with a shiny, new, hot, better car. Like, here I am with my POS car, and here I am 3 times a day. It lets me know what it would be like if I spent money. And it gives me a reason to come back every day, which is really a nice added bonus. And so I'm really surprised that more games don't take this tactic of having a battle arena or having, I don't know, just something where every day you have a reason to come back and you get a taste of what it's like if you were a player who spent money. It delivers value for free players, and it will also hopefully get some players off the hump and teach them why it's important to spend money. If you have a competitive game where you're earning premium currency, I think it's important to level the playing field. Now, somebody asked before about pay to win, and in my opinion, if you have a free-to-play game, unless you are not selling items that impact game purchases, it's impossible to completely alleviate the stigma of pay to win. What it is possible to do is kind of reduce the impact of it, and one way is through those social organizations I talked about before. You can let more high-level players or rich players help poor players. Another thing you can do is give players a path to earn plenty of premium currency. Clash of Clans, I think, does one of the best jobs of giving out premium currency while teaching players actions that are beneficial to the game. A lot of games give 1 or 2 for like leveling up. So last night I played the new Deer Hunter game, which is well done but really weird. Like, it kind of glorifies shooting a deer in a way that, like, I play tons of games where I shoot guys in the face and I have no problem with the slow motion head explode, but like when it's a cute deer, it's totally weird for me. But so every time you level up, you get like 1 currency, and then, or no, you get, it's maybe 1 or no, it's 1, and then you go to the store and a gun costs 99, and it's like, I'm never gonna grind. I mean, some players are going to grind until they hit 99 to buy the sniper rifle, but the gulf there is so wide. Whereas Clash of Clans starts you with 500 premium currency, and then they give you the opportunity to earn a lot while also teaching you the game. So this is something that I think can help. It helps smooth out because it helps give those free players a taste. But so look for ways to do this. Look for ways to give, level the playing field. It's never going to be completely level. And, if you go with a game that completely avoids pay to win, unless you're a unicorn, like League of Legends is a unicorn. Theoretically, all champions are equal, but my champion that I've purchased may give me an advantage over this week's free champion. So that's not a pay to win model. It's just like paying for my preference, but they are the outlier. They are like the 99.9 percentile, and what they do isn't going to work for most games, so you're probably going to have to do some pay-to-win games unless you build one of the best games in the world. So that's just a little takeaway there. Advertise your goods. Like, there's nothing wrong with showing players the ability to spend money. Fairway Solitaire I love. I think it's a great solitaire game that takes kind of the golf theme, and it's a really fun game. They do a good job of, just like Minion Rush, offering you the ability to spend money in the playfield. And then on the main menu, right there, 99 cents, buy the whole thing. So they give you a couple hours of content for free. Like, it takes you probably 2 or 3 hours to play through all the free levels. They give you a daily course that you can come back and play every day for free. And when you're in the menus, you see the ability to spend $1 to unlock the rest of the levels. Like, this goes straight back to Halloween. Open the door. Make it easy for your players to spend money in your game. Games are more fun with friends in general. Now that we're moving more and more away from the social realm and more into the mobile realm, it maybe I feel like I remember a stat on Bejeweled Blitz, maybe 20 or 25% of their players sign in with Facebook. But those players who do see social pressure every week, they see other players' scores, and the whole incentive to spend money in that game is to earn a higher score. And so if you see other players' scores, you get some social pressure. There was some research published by TinyCo last year that Facebook users are 60% more likely to be payers in their game. Now, obviously, correlation doesn't mean causation. Maybe people who are more likely to spend are also more likely to engage with their friends. But in general, I think you can prove that social structures and social pressure can do a lot to influence a player to spend money in a game, and that there's a lot of value to asking somebody to spend money and asking someone to engage with their friends and giving them some insight into how their friends are scoring and where they're at in their game, introducing some competition. I talked before about the importance of an elder game, and Life is Crime by Red Robot Labs really emphasizes how important this can be and how impactful it can be. At GDC Online last year, Pete Hawley, who's their chief of product, I think, at Red Robot Labs, talked about this game. It's a Mafia Wars style game with location-based elements, so we could fight to be the king of El Cholo down the street, which is I love El Cholo. I'm going there tomorrow night. It's the best. But if I really loved El Cholo, I can fight to be the king of my office or the king of the school. That's an activity they see a lot, is people fighting to be on the top of the chart for their favorite coffee shop or their school. And 6 months into the game, they released Gang Warfare. And Pete said that it totally revolutionized their game. It instantly tripled player retention and doubled revenue 6 months post-launch. With a single feature, they threw out their entire product roadmap and focused everything else they were doing on this gang versus gang warfare. And I know that every person who's in here operating a free-to-play game would love to triple their retention and double their revenue with one feature. Like, that's what we're all doing. You almost never get the silver bullet, right? Like, you launch your live game, and maybe you're making money and you're like a really hit game, but I think the more common experience is you launch your game, you're doing all right, and you keep launching feature after feature hoping for the silver bullet. For them, this social gang-on-gang warfare was a silver bullet. And if you look at mid-core games, like, I think it's this social competition and these social organisms that really convince players to spend in big numbers. Final note I'll make is on optimizing the path to purchase. This is Tiny Castle. This is a game I worked on. I worked on the combat system on this game. These screenshots are really old, so for all I know, they've changed this completely because they're really good. Product management-driven organization. They update their games all the time. But while we were in the run-up to launch, I noticed, okay, let's say I wanted to spend money in the game. If I wanted to spend premium currency. Here I am. I'm about to upgrade my bank. So I click my bank. I get this screen. I spend my earned currency. That's click number 2. I have to place my bank because it no longer fits in the previous spot. That's click number 3. If I wanted to spend premium currency, I have to know that I can click my bank again, click number 4, to see this button, finish instantly. So clicking that is click number 5, click number 6, finally finish. 6 clicks in, plus knowledge I had to already acquire to know that I could spend premium currency. Like, this is the whole point, to get somebody to spend their premium currency so they hopefully buy more. Contrast that to Backyard Monsters Unleashed, recently released by Kixeye. If I want to upgrade my hatchery, I click to select it. I click this little upgrade button, that's 2, and then 3. Right here, I'm given the option. Here it's 1,500 woods in 15 minutes. That's what it'll cost if I want to upgrade my resources. Right next to that, complete it instantly, premium currency button. And what's great about this is that if you play Backyard Monsters, in a normal session, you will see the ability to spend money over and over and over again. Right? It's not in your face. It's not blocking your progress. It's not an annoying pop-up. They're just making the ability to purchase present. They're making the path to spending that premium currency very clear. How many people have ever run a banner advertisement on the web? Right? You know that it takes thousands and thousands of impressions of an advertisement to get one person to click it once, and then they jet out of your website in like 2 seconds anyways. But I have a theory that operating a free-to-play game is very similar. You need to generate lots and lots of impressions of the ability to spend money in order to convince people to convert to a payer. If nothing else, mobile gaming is about short sessions, and it's about long treadmill, and it's about making things very, very easy. Mobile gaming is comfort gaming. If you look at where people are playing these games, they're playing on the couch, maybe while watching TV. They're playing in bed, first thing they do when they get up in the morning, or thing they do to unwind when they are going to sleep. They play on the toilet. Let's not pretend people don't play on the toilet. So hopefully you can take the lessons from this talk and use them to make it easy that when someone's in bed or someone's on the shitter, that they can spend $5 in your game and have a great time doing it. So this is me. You can email me, follow me on Twitter. I have plenty of articles, previous talks, and other things on the blog on my website. So please get in touch. And with that, I'll open the floor to questions. It's a small room, but please use the mic because I'm really having trouble hearing today. Anybody?
So in the Deer Hunter game you mentioned, you say you can't earn enough currency, but we know the game's making a lot of money. So do we know whether people are making that leap from that not having that currency?
We can, I mean, its chart position is crazy, so we can assume that overall their UI is really great, and I think they do a good job of allowing you to spend money. So clearly they're selling things that players want. I was just using that as an example of if you're one of those free players who's never going to spend, their price and the amount of premium currency they give away is almost prohibitive to ever making a purchase.
So the things you offer is cash, right? Do you think they should be consumable? Or do you think
Sorry, my sinuses are really giving me trouble today. I'm really sorry about that.
So the items you're offering up as cash, cash, as opposed to in-game currency, do you think they need to be consumable, or do you think they need to be permanent?
So go the Kingdom Rush example.
Yeah.
If somebody is spending straight cash in your money, they should be getting something of value. So, like, that's in Kingdom Rush, you're buying heroes that make the game significantly easier, and I think that's a good model. I mean, there's no reason not to run the experiment, but if I had to guess, if somebody is spending straight money and it's not on a currency package, it should be on something permanent that significantly boosts their experience. Right. Well, in Candy Crush, yeah, that's true. In Candy Crush, you can spend for levels, but you can spend for a lot of things.
You were speaking of the game that is mainly multiplayer, highly repeatable, competitive social games. But let's assume that my normal
Let's assume that my what?
My normal game, the game I propose by design, is this kind of experience. So what should be my complementary early game?
Oh, so if I understand the question, your game is infinitely replayable. Like, it's an infinitely replayable. So, in the question then was, what sort of Elder game do I need? You actually...
My game answers what you listed as Elder Games characteristics. So what should be my early game?
Oh, what should be your early game? Okay, so if you have a game that is a kind of an Elder game only game, and there are plenty of examples of that. For example, Bejeweled Blitz, I would say, is an Elder game only. Like, there's no difference. It's just an infinitely repeatable action. So, what should be my early game? I would suggest some sort of onboarding process that allows the player to fail in a controlled environment. My personal experience as a gamer is that if I go into a multiplayer game and I lose instantly, my resources are stolen by some high-level player, or like, again, back to Call of Mini Infinity, launch into a level, instantly get shot, it shows you the gun, like somebody shot me with a $7 gun, like my first experience. So if you have a social-only game, your onboarding process should probably be something that allows the player to learn the ropes in a controlled environment and allows him or her to fail in a safe way without feeling like they're just getting destroyed. I wrote an article on League of Legends recently. Somebody said it took them a week. As a seasoned player, it took them a week of practice before they were able to play like in any sort of decent fashion. Now, as I said, League is a unicorn. It can get away with that. But if you're trying to compete with League and that's your first time user experience, you're never going to take their users away.
I'll use the microphone.
Thank you.
So first of all, I just want to say thank you for the great talk. I really appreciate it. You touched on this briefly, but I would like to hear sort of a deeper analysis of it. As far as like the whales or the high value users, in your opinion, does it hurt or help you from a revenue standpoint long term to have the $200, the $500, the $1,000 item? Because I've heard it both ways, where some people say, why not have it? Because someone will buy it, and if one person buys it, then it's worth it. But I would be more interested on the counter argument of, I see that, and that upsets me or that pisses me off that you think you can get away with that.
Right. So the question in a nutshell is, if I'm selling luxury goods, am I afraid that, how do I do it in a way that doesn't scare players off, basically? So you can know that the vast majority of your audience on any free-to-play game, probably 98% or more, are never going to give you $1. And so rightly so, if they see in the store an item for sale for $20, $50, $100, it may anger them and make them more likely to leave the game. So what I would recommend, and I've recommended this experiment to somebody who had a mature live game, and I haven't followed up to know if he ran it or not, but don't show those items until somebody's spent money. If somebody's never spent money, hide items in the store that cost more than X dollars, right? Like, don't show the $500 item. Similarly, so like, I know that people who, again, from Last Stand Dead Zone, people who have bought the $100 package have bought it multiple times. Right. They're very happy with their purchase. So if somebody buys the $100 package, that's when it's okay to make a $250 package available to them, because they're the type of player who might like it. So just be intelligent, just run a really intelligent store, and don't show people things that are going to anger them if they're that sort of player. Right. That would be my advice. That's the experiment I would like to run. How much time left?
Thank you.
Okay.
What do you think about pay to win? And I know in Asia it's well done and everybody happy with pay to win. They are using the game like putting competition between players are playing for winning, and it's not very popular in the US. Do you think it will change?
So the question is kind of what is my opinion on pay to win do I think opinions of gamers will change in the U.S. over time? So yeah, one thing at a high level, I'm sure everybody knows it, but like in general, Asian markets don't have any problem with pay-to-win mechanics. That's what all their games are like, or that's what they're used to. Out here, we have, and in the let's call them the British colonized countries, so America, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, Ireland. You're going to get more resistance on pay-to-win. More and more studies show out that we're kind of dealing with a very vocal minority there. Like there was a great story. There was a great GDC presentation by Ben Cousins on Battlefield Heroes years ago, where they did a study, and the people on the forums who complained the most about pay-to-win mechanics also spent the most money. And there was another study recently that kind of confirmed that sort of thing. So I actually don't think where it really hurts you is in your customer ratings, because your star rating really affects whether or not someone is going to download your game. I do think in general, over time, the gamers right now who are being raised on free-to-play games, who are probably never going to buy a PlayStation 4, like the 8-year-old playing Smurfs Village is probably never going to own a dedicated gaming console. He might. I hope he does. I love my console games. But I think as we age, it'll be more and more of a minority, and it'll be the most vocal minority, but that really has an issue with it. But in general, my philosophy is like it's all about a long-term player relationship. So if your pay-to-win mechanics churn your users, if they do things that make it more likely than not for your player to quit, then they're going to hurt you in the long run, even if you might see short-term revenue gains. It's really that if you can have a game with an 18 or a 36-month relationship with the player, that's where you're really going to be making a lot of money and making someone feel great. They love your game. Anybody else? All right, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.